Welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a great lunch. We're going to start our afternoon session. That's going to run until 5:30 or thereabouts, depending on our speakers. And we'll have a rotation of speakers again. And to start off this afternoon session, we're going to start with our brother from the Mohawk tribe, the Mohawk Nation, Kevin Deer.
Okay, nyawa John. Honda Junior at Kadaswa. Sakare Wewat Kunuaradu and Kajoko Wegu, Zenitzus Wadum Sadade Womanizarade. Degu Agatrori ni Nohoto Wagat Gato, Noda Wagadewisto Haje, Tano Zenizi Tajat Dihat, Zenizi Wagadayaruja. Signore ne uomunizera tenu. Ayaoski toga tana no hodo adagatka we siniti akakaradu uadane azaya again ha toga dina na yohtuna so what you. So I'd like to welcome each and every one of you that are with us today. What I said in my own language is that there are a lot of things that I've learned, that I've studied, that I've experienced in my life. I'll be sharing some of those things in hopes that some of the things that I'm going to talk about today will be able to help you, to help us in understanding where we are in these times. So I'd like to start off by first acknowledging that I'm grateful that in our community of Ganawage, that we still have people that are fluent in our language, that our own creation story, our sacred songs, our dances, our rituals, our own form of governance, everything that makes us unique in this world, we are still fulfilling those roles and responsibilities to the best that we can. So to Rarunda De, who is the name of the Sky Chief, to Yeti Zizu, who is the actual name of Sky Woman, to her daughter, Kahondokta, which is the name of the Mother Earth, to Daruhyawagu, who is the holder of the sky, and his brother Sawiskara, and to all of those forces of life that we're all connected to, and that we have to understand our role and how these things shape our thinking and how we're supposed to keep things in balance so that we could walk this good red road. So just to kind of like begin with, as a little kid growing up, I was not raised with our language, with our creation story, with our songs, our dances, and all of that. All I knew was Christian concepts and beliefs. I was an altar boy, that's all I knew. But then when I went to high school and they started teaching us the Bering Strait and then the Big Bang, and then I started to question many things, there came a point in my life where I said, there's no such thing as life after death. Because I asked some of the older guys, so what happens to you when you die? They said, you're dead. And at that time in my life, all I knew was heaven and hell. So I said, well, what about that? They said, that's all BS. When you die, you're dead, there's nothing. So that's what I believe for a time. I asked some of the older guys, so well, why are we here? Some of them said, wine, women, and song. We're here for a good time. So live it up and don't worry about it. But then when I was 22 years old, in the span of a year, three things happened. The death of my grandpa, the conception of my daughter, and then a teacher, an elder who came to Ganawage. And that elder was Tom Porter, and maybe some of you know him. I refer to him as my spiritual elder because he started setting that path that guided me back to the great tree of peace, to all of those things that make us unique in this world. So when I ask myself, who am I now? And for the last 42 years now, I always go back to our language, because this foreign language that I'm speaking it doesn't give justice to helping us to truly understand who we are. I am a ogo. When I take that word apart, the first part, unwe, says I'm a person. Unwe comes from the root word dinawe, which means forever. Wow. The next thing is, if in my language you ask me and you say, well, what is my clan? Dara. Dara is clay. It has nothing to do with animal. In our language, it talks about this walking soil, this clay that my spirit that lives forever comes into, that can give my spirit expression in this little bit of time that I'm here. And then we originate in Izina Goruyedi, the other side of the blue. So I'm here for a time with this walking clay, and then I'm going to go back home. And the other thing in our language, when we talk about parents, mother, father, grandparents, brother, sister, children, well, in this language, people say family. While in my language, we talk about akwadzire, zahwadzire, odzire. Make a fire where that actual wood is being consumed by the fire. Those red hot coals, that's odzire. So when we talk about gahwadzire, we're talking about that sacred fire. Now, do we truly understand and believe that? As a human family, we don't. Because if we understood that sacredness and how it connects us to the Great Spirit, then we can't go to war with another person. We can't kill another person. We can't rape. We can't steal. And we're supposed to respect this. We're not supposed to be contaminated with alcohol, drugs, dope, or whatever. We're supposed to be living in harmony with the first thing that gives us life, which is this body. I wish I knew that when I was a latter teenager, because I used to watch football games. Say, you want a good life, Miller High Life. You want to be cool, walk a mile for a camel. So we're always advertised, we're bombarded with this advertising that says, you know what, it's even good to destroy your body. But I'm glad that I went through all of that. I wish I could tell a different story, but I made a commitment to myself. I said, if I ever become a parent, my kids would never, ever see me smoking cigarettes, consuming alcohol, being violent, doing drugs. And it's 42 years now that I've been on this road. Not to say that I haven't walked a different path, but that was because I didn't know any better. I was totally disconnected from my language, my culture, and to me, being a Mohawk was just a word. But then I got inspired by many things that have happened that got me to go back and to pick those things all up. In 1990, because of internal conflict within our nation, Mohawks decided to kill each other. And when those two guys were killed in our sister community, I happened to be in Six Nations that weekend, May 1st of 1990. I went to go see one of my chiefs, my mentors. And when I pulled up in his driveway, his wife says, you have to talk to Jake, you guys got to do something. Anyways, the decision was that we'll call an emergency meeting. And some of the people who gathered, some of the chiefs, the clan mothers, faith keepers, people, when the peacemaker completed our house and brought us back this unity, and he re-established the installation of how we'll put our clan mothers, our chiefs in, and our people to establish how our government would work. He also gave us some warnings. And one was that the leadership should never, ever argue amongst themselves. Because if that ever crept in and the dissension would start, then the great peace would fall and the people would suffer. And because of all of the things that have happened to us, Christian influence, the introduction of money, this whole lifestyle there are times when, yeah, we are at each other. But he said that we would do this ceremony and call for his return. So on Sunday morning of May 6, 1990, we did that ceremony. We asked for that intervention. And I don't have time to go into explain about all of the things that have happened and continue to happen since then. But as far as this Turtle Island is concerned, that we reside on, that is in our creation story, that intervention is here and it's continuing to happen in many ways. The next thing that happens after that, Elijah Harper gets up in the Manitoba legislature with an eagle feather and quells the Meech Lake Accord. The next thing that happens is our nation goes into a conflict with Canada for 78 days. Because when we went go see the mayor of Oka at the time, I was part of that. And we asked him, don't expand your golf course into our cemetery of our people. Well, the prevailing narrative to most of the people that emigrated and are settlers here on Turtle Island is that might is right. You know, we have it. We have it with our religion. We have it with our monetary system. We have it with our form of government, and you people are just in the way, and you're going to have to listen to what we have to say. So what happened? He didn't want to listen to what we had to tell him. So he calls in his forces, which is the Sûreté du Québec. And then there's an exchange of gunfire and one corporal is killed. And then that whole thing happens. And then on it goes, all of the things that have gone on where we've had to deal with many things. But there's so many ceremonies and deep spiritual work that our people have done and continue to do. And that's why I maintain that the Indigenous spiritual resurrection is here. That these 215 plus kids whose spirits have resurrected up from the dead, as these spirits are resurrecting up from the dead, they're lifting what I call a curse or a spell. That now the majority of people now are waking up or being awoken about where we are in these times. And as I said, all of us, we all better start to see different. We all better start to hear different. We all better start to speak different. And we all better start to work and do different. Because if not, well, Mother Nature is already showing us who's got the final say. And what she is doing now is she's showing us through COVID, through the ice caps that are melting, through all of the environmental degradation that we are doing, that if we continue on the journey that we are continuing on, then it's safe to say that the two-leggeds will not be around very much longer. We can't put a definitive time on it, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what has happened to what I call this pristine garden that you could go to any river and drink from the waters. There was so much plentiful, bountiful of trees and animals and fish. And in 500 years, it's becoming nothing but a dump. The lakes and rivers are contaminated. The air that we breathe is contaminated. And that's the very thing that sustains us. So if we want to cut off the thing that sustains us, then it's safe to say we aren't going to have life. And the peacemaker told us, he specifically minded our chiefs that whenever we sit in council, that we have a responsibility to those future generations, 7 generations ahead. But even a lot of our people haven't followed a lot of those teachings. And then when we look at how we're supposed to be in treaty relationship based on the Gaswanta, which is the two rule, the canoe and the big ship with sails. So at early contact, we asked them, so what do you want? They said, we'd like to share the bountiness of these lands with you. We said, oh, what else do we need to know about you? Well, they said, we're coming with God and his son Jesus. We said, well, tell us that story. And they did. And they got done. Our people said, well, the way we understand it, we talk about Darung Yawagu, the holder of the sky. But we also talk about Sa'uyera, Goa, the source of life for all life. So we shouldn't have a problem then, because we're thinking about that same sacred energy. So we'll travel on this river of life, us in our canoe, you in your big ship. If ever we have a problem, we'll evoke those powers. We'll smoke the peace pipe, because that's how we connect with all of the forces of the universe, and we'll resolve it in a good way. But what happened? The papal bulls and the doctrine of discovery and everything that they used to justify all that history that happened, everything is out of whack and out of balance. But as I said, we're now in the time of the indigenous spiritual resurrection. And the indigenous spiritual knowledge of our people, of our ancestors, of the animals, of everything that sustains us is resurrecting up. And there are a lot of people, even non-native people, that understand this. The environmentalists and the ones that see that capitalism and this idea that you can have dominion over the earth, so be fruitful, multiply, and subdue it, that's got to change. Because if we maintain the status quo, well, we know that we won't be around very much longer. So it's up to us to come together. And in spite of everything that happened to us, they're here with us, they're in our house. We still have to show them unconditional love and try to get them to understand. Because those faces that have not come out of the earth yet are looking up to us. And they're thinking and they're saying, when I want to be born and when I'm coming into this world, I too want to inherit a happy, safe, clean, beautiful, peaceful, loving home. And we cannot let them know. So that being said, our people have always been tied to our dreams. Our dreams are part of the messengers of the great mystery of Rarundate, of the natural powers of the universe. And I never understood this. And the first prophetic dream that I ever had was of my grandpa, just after he passed on. In June 22nd, 1978, he came to me in a dream. And in the dream, my grandma was cooking. There was a lot of things in it. I didn't understand the dream, but I went to go see a buddy of mine, and I told him I have this dream. He said, you want me to explain that dream to you? I said, absolutely. He said, your grandfather needs a feast. I said, what's that? Somebody has to do this feast in our own language, burn the tobacco, our own spiritual food, and call his spirit to come in and eat with us. Come on, I said, spirit. I said, who believes in that? I says, what? There could be a God? Because at the time, that's all I knew. And then I says, there's this hell and burning and sin and purgatory and all of that. And then demons and being possessed and all this kind of stuff. And I used to hear some of those stories too as a kid growing up. Anyways, I said, I think you're just scaring me. I said, I don't want to talk about that. I said, that's up to you. Because I was always afraid of dead people. I wouldn't like going to funerals. There was just something, I guess as a little kid hearing all of this, it scarred me. Because God was angry, you better watch out. You could be punished forever. So I never wanted to really deal with that. So anyways, eventually I came around to it. I went to go talk to different elders who understood our way. And then eventually I had that feast for my grandpa. And I tell an interesting story because I say it was almost like there was a portal that was opened up with the ancestral realm. the sky world because all of the things that he tells me, that he teaches me. And even one time I asked him in this prophetic dream, I said, Grandpa, I said, how do we communicate? You're supposed to be dead. But there's no such thing as that. He says, the way you understand time, it's 4 years since I passed on. But since I've entered into the sky world realm, I'm going to tell you how it is. And it's based upon our Kajukwan Huxtu, which is the constitution of the great law. He said, me and my grandparents and their grandparents and everybody going to the beginning of time, he said, we sit in a great sky world council. And he said, in the center of that great sky world council, as big as a little drop of water, is the earth. And he says, we're always intervening from the spiritual to the physical, back and forth forever. Because he said, if we ever stop doing our divine work and intervention, he said, this earth will dry up and there's no more life. That's just one example. I remember I got up that morning and I said, wow, that's so pretty deep and profound. I know where I'm going when I die. And I don't care who on the world will dispute with me and say, that's blasphemy. You have no right to talk like that. To me, it doesn't matter. Every person is going to have to confront their own mortality one day, because none of us is living forever. And however you believe that, well, that's good. That's how you see the world. And this is how I see the world, because it came from a dream. And I believe that's divine intervention. This time that we're in of this crisis, during the 1990 that I was talking about, I was part of a delegation that was appointed by our government, the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy, to try to go and help to deal with that. And there was 7 of us in one hotel room at the hotel. We had asked to bring in some cots and all of that. And one of the condoled chiefs that was with us was the Turtle Clan. And when he would go into council, he'd wear his gastoa with his deer antlers on. Anyway, while we were there, we go to sleep this one night, I have this prophetic dream again. Now, if you actually come to my community of Ganawage, we have 2 big cemeteries here, a Catholic cemetery and a Protestant cemetery. And those 2 cemeteries are separated by a creek. Now, today there's houses around, but 100 years ago, you wouldn't see no houses. You would just see the geography of the land. You know, these 2 plots separated by a creek, and then even our people are separated by religion. So now in this prophetic dream, I'm walking because that part of the creek runs north and south. As I'm walking, I come across this snapping turtle, but it's a live one. And the snapping turtle is stuck in the mud, but it's huge. Heck, that shell is about almost the width of my arms. So I see this snapping turtle and I said, heck, let me pull him out of the mud. So I grab him and I pull him out of the mud. And when I pull him out of the mud, here the snapping turtle has deer antlers on. And I said to myself, wow, look at that. There's the chief. I remember I said it 3 times, and then all of a sudden there was a whirlwind spirit that came down from the sky. And as this whirlwind spirit came down on the sky, that snapping turtle got up on its tail and it started to grow into a whirlwind. And as it's going into this whirlwind and it's spinning, all of a sudden a silhouette appears. And when the spinning stops, here's this ancient, beautiful, handsome Uguahue man in front of me. White hair, white armband, headband, armband, white buckskins. And there's this aura of light around him. And I'm looking at this man and I'm saying, wow, holy heck, I'm in the presence of something that I can't really explain. But this is something phenomenal. Anyways, I'm looking at him, and when I look, he looks away. But then all of a sudden, Jaws, our eyes met. And when I looked into his eyes and he looked into mine, it was like in a nanosecond. Everything from the moment of my conception to that second week of August of 1990, now get this, every thought that I ever thought, every word that I ever did, and any action that I ever did was all knowing. So now imagine that. So heck, I mean, there's some stupid stuff that I thought, there's dumb things that I did. And what are you gonna do? You can't run away. You're in the presence, if you almost could say, everything about your life is there. So the only thing I could do immediately was go to this place of humility, looking at some of the things that I could say that there's shame and there's some guilt and all of that. But then going to the other extreme where I knew that I was in the presence of something that can only be described in the universal language of awe, pure unconditional love, peace, serenity, joy, happiness, contentment, the two extremes. Then all of a sudden I come into the middle of that. And when I get into the middle of that, now we're connecting heart to heart. I'm in the rapture now of this spirit, of this sacred energy. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden he spoke, and this is what he said. He says, I'm bringing you a message. And the message that I'm bringing you is one that you're not going to want to hear. But then he pointed right at me, but he said, you and your generation are going to see all of the fulfillment of the native prophecies of this Turtle Island in your time. And then just like that, a whirlwind spirit came down from the sky. It wrapped itself around him. It started to spin. And then he transforms back into that snapping turtle with the deer antlers and then swims away. Heck, I jumped up. I thought I was here at the actual creek in my community of Ganawage, but here I am in the Hotel Hilton with the 7 guys. I woke them all up. I said, you guys got to listen to this. I told them the story. What does that mean? Well, a lot of things were happening because we're talking about Turtle Island. The chief that was with us was a Turtle clan. He wore his deer antlers. It all had to do with them going and bought our ancestors, the cemetery. Oh, and there was one part that I forgot, that as I was walking along that creek and I got in the vicinity perpendicular to the cemeteries, I see my mom and all the old people, and they had all this fear and perplexed look on their face. And my mom was calling me to go and join them. And at that time, I'm 33 years old, and I said to myself, I said, you know what? You have all the knowledge, all the answers. You're all the old people. I'm kind of like just a young guy here. I said, no, I ain't going there. You fix it. And I kept going on my journey, and that's when I meet this snapping turtle. I missed that part. So the chief now that was with us at that time is passed on, and he's in the ancestor realm. I remember that I said to our group, I says, you know what? I says, there's no doubt in my mind that me and my generation, we're going to see a lot of things that's going to come to pass from 1990. And sure enough, look at where we are. So many things going up, happening around in the world that are causing people's mind to be challenged. They're fearful, all of this. And this has all been prophesied, and it's here. And I was told. So when all of these things happen, I don't fledge, and I just say, hey, I've already been told. The turtle spirit already spoke to me and gave me this warning that these things are going to happen in my lifetime. So here we are. And this is just the precipice now. The door has been opened up to more things that are coming. So here's what I tell people. Whatever your so-called spiritual reserve is, when you close your eyes and you go within yourself and you pray to whoever, whatever, because to me, it doesn't matter. When we try to understand it through this language, that great mystery is beyond all thoughts and forms, because we're never going to fully understand it. We have these stories, sure, but at the same time, there are aspects of those stories that we can even question, well, where did that come from? And understandably so. There are certain things, there are mysteries about the great mystery that we're never going to know in this life. But when we'll pass on, all of those things that we question and ponder will now then be revealed. But in this physical world, we have choice. It's up to us. What do you want to think? What do you want to believe? What we call our elder brother the sun, because every day is a birthday. The sun rises in the east, reaches a midway point. That sun begins to set, goes back into the womb. When I look in the mirror, I know that I'm starting to set. My hair is turning white. My face is starting to crease up. And in a not too distant future, I'm going back into the womb of my mother. And I'm looking forward to that because I got everything ready. All my clothes, all my arrangements with the funeral parlor, how I'm going to be buried, who's going to be the speaker, all of that. Because I said, that's my responsibility. I'm not putting that on anybody else. So I took care of the things that I have to do about everything. I'm going to love this life. I love it. I'm not in a hurry to leave, but when it happens, and I have no fear because I know where I'm going. So anyway, talking about this idea of elder brother son. So not too distant future, I'm going back into the womb of my mother. Tomorrow the sun comes up again. And we're all resurrecting up, but in spirit. And we go back to the great spirit. And when we understand this, and there's no doubt, it gives you that discipline to now have a different relationship with this walking clay, with your family, with the Mother Earth, with our ancestors in that sacred dance of life. So my time is running out. I don't have too much more. I think I go till about quarter after. So I'm going to try to, I got a list of some things that I wanted to talk about here. So in my family, my dad, my mom, my brother, and my sisters to a degree. Some of us, but myself, like we really went deep into picking up all of this stuff. My dad ended up having a heart attack just before Christmas in December of 2014. I remember when that happened, I called up with Weh'na. We brought some of our leadership together. We have our own way of helping our people to transition into the next world. So we did that ceremony. And my dad recovered and he was around for 8 more months. So within that 8 months, I went to go visit him at his house. And one morning when I got up, he said to me, he said, son, I want to talk to you. He said, I want to tell you something. He said, if anything happens to me again, I don't want no ceremony. I don't want to be resuscitated. Just let me go home. I said, all right, Dad. I said, well, let's put that in writing. So the day that he's going to die, I don't know that this is going to happen. So my mom calls me early in the morning and she said, the hospital just called, your dad fell. Go see what happened to him. So when I got there, the nurse said, because he's on this blood thinner Coumadin, I already called the ambulance and we're sending him to the downtown Montreal to have his brain x-rayed. I said, all right. So I walked in the room. I said, Dad, I said, how are you? He said, good. I said, are you hurt? Any bones broke or anything? He said, no. He had 2 big lumps in his head. He had a big cut here in his arm. I said, all right. So we're going to the hospital. Anyway, we get there. We're doing all the tests. He's getting impatient. I gave him water, scratch his back. The last big conversation we have, he said, what time is it? said, it's 8 o'clock. Well, he says, come on, let's go home. I said, well, let's just wait for the result. No. He says, come on, let's go home. I said, Dad, come on. I said, let's just wait. Anyway, sitting there, waiting. All of a sudden, it was about 20 after 9 or thereabouts. I look at him and all of a sudden I see he's going into cardiac arrest. The doctor was there filling out papers. So he jumped up and he was getting to the defibrillator. I said, nope. I said, let him go. The doctor's initial face response was, hey, I saved life and you're telling me to let him die? I said, let him go. Anyways, I grabbed his hand and I spoke to him in our language and helped him to transition. And then he monitored his heart. And then at 9:29, he declared him deceased. Anyways, I held his body to be with him for that little bit. I called the family. We stayed with him until his body got cold. We came back to the res. A lot of people started coming over to my parents' house, and it was hot that day, August 17th. I said, I gotta go outside. I'm gonna go sit outside. And it was hot. And now I had time to be with myself a little bit, and I was starting to think and reflect about my relation to good and sometimes maybe not so good. Anyways, what ended up happening is all of a sudden my partner came out and she put her hand on my shoulder and said, hey, what kind of bird is that on the line? So I look up and it's a mourning dove. So I said, mourning dove, so how come there's only one? I said, well, it's a sign right there. My mom's gonna be alone. So that reminds me of another story of bird on the line. In May of 1999, my dad came visit me. I gave him a hug and a kiss. And as I opened the door, my clothesline is right there. And this little fledgling robin lands on my clothesline. So my dad, I said, this little bird is a messenger. So watch this. I said, we're going to get some kind of message. Anyways, I was making coffee. All of a sudden, the phone rings. It's Tom Porter. Tom Porter says, Kevin, I need a favor. He said, can you help me out? I said, sure, Tom. I said, what? So he mentioned a good friend of ours that his child had died, a little girl. He says, can you drive up, he says, to Albany and go and help out? I said, sure. So I went and I helped take care of that. So second story now, bird on the line. As I was thinking about all of that, all of a sudden I started to feel guilty because I was thinking to myself, I said, heck, if I didn't tell that doctor to not give him that defibrillator, my dad would probably still be alive. So now I was feeling guilt. And the tears started. There was a constriction in my throat. I wasn't feeling good. Anyways, I closed my eyes and I said, Dad, I says, you know what? I says, you're in the ancestral spirit realm now. I said, there's no such thing as death for us. I said, if there's any way you can communicate with me, I says, and appease my mind, I says, man, I said, when I open my eyes, I said, if there's something there, that's good. I said, if I open my eyes and there's nothing there, well, I said, that's okay too. I said, the life expectancy of a so-called typical Canadian is 77. Not that I'm Canadian, I'm Weh'na. But anyway, and I'm 57. So I says, you know what, keep the seat warm because in 20 years, I'm gonna join you in this great Skyworld Council. I open my eyes and I'm like, hey, where's my phone? Where's my camera? Hurry up. I said, I gotta get a picture of this. I said, if I tell people this story, they're gonna say, that's not true. You made it up. Anyway, my dad's name is Freddie. Our last name is Deer. This whole story started because my partner said, what kind of bird is that on the line? So I don't know if this is clear, but I'm just gonna show you the message that I end up getting. Right here, there's a letter F in the clouds. Right here, there's an actual bird. And when you turn it over this way, in the actual bird is the letter D. I thought to myself, wow, thank you, Dad. You just confirmed, even though you're in spirit, you were able to make nature conjure up and give me a sign in the clouds to reinforce this idea that there's no such thing as death. We're Ogwahue. That spirit, Zinawa, is forever. We come in this walking soil for this little period of time so that our spirit has something, a vessel, to be able to express itself. So why do we come here? Well, we come here first of all to live in communion and harmony with this walking soil, with our families. When we follow our ceremonial calendar, we have all these sacred songs and dances that we're so happy that the sun continues to shine, that our grandmother does her work, that our grandfather, the thunder beings, bring the water, that the sap, the maple tree, the corn, the beans, the squash, that the animals, the birds, the insects, the fresh water, that all of these things will continue. Because in our creation story, that's all we are told. That at the beginning of time, all we have to do is to have this attitude of gratitude. And that's why I say today, we're lucky. My people, our longhouses, that there's still people that know all this knowledge, these ceremonies, these dances, these rituals. And imagine that. The whole impetus for the residential schools that started in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, was we will kill the Indian to save the man. What was so wrong with us having this intimate, loving relationship with the whole essence of what we are, that source of life for all life? Anyways, that idea will never, ever happen. Because the minute there is no more Ogohunwa people, those other people that think that they're going to be around to survive and live, they ain't going to be around much longer either. If we cannot sing to creation and do all these sacred dances, that those spirits get rejuvenated when we take the time to celebrate. Because in the teachings, it says that if we ever turn our back on those things, then those things may say, all right, human beings don't love me anymore. Well, then I don't have to be here. So imagine if all of a sudden our elder brother's son says, you know, I ain't shining my face anymore. Or if Grandma Moon said, I ain't gonna do my work anymore. Or if corn, beans, and squash, the plant nation said, well, we're not gonna grow anymore. Or if the spirit of the water said, well, there's gonna be no more water. So we're at the mercy of all of these things, and we are the weakest link. And that's why we continue to have the attitude of gratitude, which gets expressed through sacred ceremony, song, dances, and speeches for the continuance of life. So in closing, all I'd like to say is this, is that we're in a time now of big things that we're gonna see. Live your life from a place of being absolutely fearless. Do not fear death, do not fear dying. Never ever fear the Creator. We come from love, we're returning to love. Don't fear cancer, don't fear COVID. Just come from this place of love as much as possible. And like at the end of the day, when we're on our pillow, because life is gonna end one day, as long as we did the best that we could to be a helper, to love the earth, to understand our connectedness to the ancestors, don't worry about it, because we're already guaranteed everlasting life or going back home. So with that, I hope you all are inspired a little bit by some of the things that I said. And I bid you all the best in peace, happiness, love, joy for all your continued days on this beautiful Mother Earth. Now, Koa, thank you very much.
Willie Wynn, Kevin, that's a message is very important. You know, our elder Jim told us this morning we needed the truth. We needed to hear the truth, and sometimes the truth is not easy to hear. It has to be said, though. We all come to that point. So thank you so much for sharing that very important message.
Yeah.
So we will move on to our next presenter, Niskipisuwin. If you're there, feel free to go ahead and start your talk. Thank you so much.
Williwan. Kwekwe, Siriwan, ke gulazi kupan. Deliwas Niskipisuwin, wabi kuku kazu wakdolna bamok. Nujiao naga notabex medak migok. Nizini wesquin now. Naga ajibali dahazieli best kuramukad now. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Niskipisuwin. I live at Medok and I am a member of the Passamaquoddy tribe, and I am a two-spirit. And I've been asked to be here to share with you all today in this ceremony, by my elders, and also by my ancestors, and by my own commitment to this ceremony, by my own commitment to, the commitment that I made to this sacred fire to be here. So a lot of what my role in this particular ceremony has been, from the first year, has been to speak about two-spirit teachings, two-spirit traditions, two-spirit history, and to share the things that I am, able to share with the greater audience, the greater ceremonial community of this particular ceremony that is not made up of Indigenous people. And to share, what two-spirit medicine is meant to teach, what two-spirit medicine is meant to bring to everybody, regardless of whether or not you yourself are two-spirit. And one of the biggest teachings, and I guess kind of the ultimate through line of all of these two-spirit teachings, is that, regardless of who you are, everybody, each person is born with a certain balance of masculine and feminine energies within themselves. So each person needs to figure out, what that best balance is for themselves, because it's going to differ from each individual, differ from each individual to the next. And while everybody learns from two-spirit energy and two-spirit medicine, I guess would be a better term, it's not necessarily to say that everybody themselves is meant to be a two-spirit and embody all of those aspects, but learn from that medicine to bring each and everybody, to bring yourselves into greater balance. And even deeper still, that two-spirit energy, especially in modern times, with how greatly our communities have changed and interacted with, the outside world, that two-spirit energy, that two-spirit balance is different for each two-spirit, as well as different for each of us, and how we present and interact with the world. So that's kind of the ultimate teaching that I want to get across today. And I guess, if you're thinking of it in terms of an essay, it's kind of the thesis. And this is my opening paragraph to all of this. And it will be, what we circle back to for our conclusion. So one of the things that is important for everybody to learn from two-spirit medicine, in addition to each of us having that balance of masculine and feminine energies, of projective and receptive energies within each of us, is that ultimately, the creation of all of us started with the finding of that sort of balance. We know that the creation, started with our spoken word, or started with a spoken word. And so while we've all heard different versions or have told our own versions that we know of the creation story, like the versions that I try to tell are pieced together from all of the information that I've gotten from all of my elders, information that I've gotten from Spirutal, from Mi'kmaq, from Weh'na, from other elders, from other nations, from from Jim, from John, and seeing how there are more than just parallels in a lot of our stories. Some of these stories are much more intimately and deeply connected to each other than just being similar and just being related to one another. But as I see the beginning of this story, the beginning of this story began with Gelwis, began with our creator, began with this ultimate creative force, this ultimate divine force that started the vibration that is the chain reaction, that is creation happening all around us, that we are all constantly participating in and actively influencing all the time. And so Gelwazid, in order to create the universe, had to unite these two opposing energies, these two different energies, this projective force and this receptive force, and this this projective force of projecting energy, and then this receptive force of not just receiving but transmuting that energy and transforming it and taking that energy and giving it greater life and giving it greater purpose. So these two energies were manifested as Continuous, the divine great feminine, the feminine half of that great spirit of that creator. So Continuous, represented this receptive energy, this void that was the space in which creation would happen. And so the masculine aspect of Gelwazid, the masculine half, the projective half of that energy would be Kchimindu or Kchimanidu, the masculine great spirit. And this was that energy that was literally projected out into the void, and into that space in which creation happened, so that when creation did happen, that vibration, that first spoken word, or that first bang of the drum, that first universal heartbeat, started at this chain reaction that is creation, that is all of us, that we are all participating in and influencing. And when Kchimindu, Continuous, were able to meet that great masculine and that great feminine, and were able to combine their energies to give place, or to give birth to creation, to give birth to a place where things could exist in what we know to be our third dimension, and what we know to be this physical dimension. And so when they finally created this place, Gelwazid was able to look down on what they'd created, and come here and see it for themselves, and be able to say, wow, so this is what the ocean sounds like. This is what a strawberry tastes like. This is what the wind and rain smell and feel like. It was a place for all of these thoughts, all of these things that had only existed within the mind, Gawazid within the minds of Kachini Naga Chimendu. It was a place for all of these ideas, all of these thoughts, all of these dreams to be created, to take on physical form, to exist outside of their minds, and to take on lives and spirits of their own, to exist outside of the mind of Gelwazid. So that vibration, that first word, that first sound, that first bang of the drum was how Gelwazid created this plane, how Gelwazid created this place to give birth to their ideas by uniting those masculine and feminine energies to give birth to creation, to the act of creation itself. And so all of these different places got created, all these different stars, all these different galaxies, all of these planets, our planet, different dimensions as well, lower dimensions, higher dimensions, all of these different places that, Gelwazid had created. The lower world, the Lamkig, the higher world, the sky world, Spumkig, where our spirits return to, where our ancestors return to, where the Sasmuinawug visit from, where the star people come from. Skitkamig, our plane where we live now. So, all of these places were created. And so before Wabanaki people arrived, before people arrived here, this place was very different. This place had mainly water and mainly animals living in that water, just a few of the first animals that were here in the very beginning. And, many of these other animals still existed in the sky world. They were still in their ancestral or spirit forms, the great sky bear and the great moose in the sky, and all of these other birds that lived in the sky and came from the sky world as well. So they lived in the spirit world. They lived in Spumkik. They lived on that same plane where Gawazid now likes to spend a lot of their time because it's easier to exist there without the same physical limitations that we have here. So in Spumkik, this woman, this Sasmuiapid, this star woman, had discovered what we would now come to know as the hole in the sky. And, Star Woman had found what appeared to be for her this hole in the ground, this hole kind of surrounded by these twinkling lights that she found in the grass. And I often describe them as the sky flowers that are, growing on the ground in the sky world. These bright twinkling lights that can often be seen from our plane of existence as well. So she found, as she was picking sky flowers, she found this circle, this hole in the ground. And looking into this hole in the ground, surrounded by these particularly bright sky flowers, she could see that miles below there was ocean. There were clouds floating by. Even an occasional bird would fly by miles and miles below. But her view was also limited. She couldn't quite see the rest of it. She could tell that she was looking down from the sky of this other world. And this web had been very tightly woven over this hole, presumably so that nobody could fall through, so that nobody could go through and get to the other side. So this very tight web was over this hole of the sky. And, Sasmuiapid, the star woman, was kind of plucking these strings and touching them and feeling what this material was made out of. And, from up above and behind her, from the Gatukswiot, from the from the spirit road, from the Milky Way. Ukmiyamusubik, grandmother spider was watching Sesmuyapit. She was watching her touch her web that she had spun over the hole in the sky. You know, she put that hole, or that web over the hole in the sky so that nobody could leave from this dimension to the next without the proper preparations and without knowing what they needed to do. So Ukmi Musabik watched Sesmuyapit as she was examining this hole in the sky, examining this web that grandmother spider had woven. And so grandmother spider descended from the Milky Way. And she descended to the sky world, and she approached Passamaquoddy and she said, you know, I can undo my web so that it's enough for you to go through, so that you may pass through the hole in the sky. But if you're going to do so, there are 3 promises you must make. And so Passamaquoddy wondered, well, what are those promises? So Ukmiya Musabik said, you know, these 3 promises that you need to make. The first is that when you go, you cannot go in the form that you exist in now. You must take on a different form. You must take on a physical body that will be able to survive and experience that dimension, to experience this place. And the second promise that you must make, the second agreement, is that you cannot stay for very long. Now, for these beings, these intergalactic beings of, you know, infinite life and light, not very long. It's about 1 human lifetime. So Passamaquoddy said, okay, well, I can agree to do that. I won't stay for very long. What's the third promise? The third promise, Ukmi Musabik said, is that you need to bring a gift with you. You need to bring something with you to leave behind when you go, when you leave that plane and you return back to the sky world. And so Passamaquoddy agreed that she would do those things. She would take on those 3 promises and carry them with her to this new place that she was going to go and visit, and that she had wanted to see and wanted to experience. And you know, Ukmiya Musabik shared with her that the reason she was undoing this web for her and made this offer was because that she knew she had a very important purpose to fulfill on this this different dimension, this spumkik, or skitkumik, this lower world from the sky world. And that Galwazid had a very specific intention for Passamaquoddy, for Star Woman, when she got there. So she undid her web and then attached her silk to Star Woman, to Passamaquoddy, and Ukmi Musabik began to lower her through the hole in the sky. And as she passed through that portal, through that circle of stars, the physical body that she had chosen for herself began to take form. Arms and legs formed, torso formed, a neck and a head, face, feet, and fingers, all very similar to ours, with eyebrows and eyelashes, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and hair coming out of the top of her head. So she took this physical form on. But she did not have any fur that grew on the rest of her body. You know, she came with only the hair that came out of the top of her head and a few other places along her body. So when she was lowered, you know, getting into these new elements, into this new place, you know, she was thinking about what gift she was going to bring and leave behind with her. And that gift had very much to do with how more people would continue to survive here. More people would continue to survive in their bodies, in this new physical plane, this new animal, more or less, that was arriving on Skidkum. So she brought with her something to keep her warm. And you know, this part of my story, I specifically got teachings from a Cree elder, and it was, you know, part of those puzzle pieces that I talked about, learning from these other Indigenous elders, particularly Algonquian elders, about our creation stories. And so, and even as our, you know, stories say that Gluskab was told by his grandmother to go east to create Wabanaki people. So Sky Woman, Star Woman, descended through the hole in the sky. And without any fur to keep her warm, she brought with her a buffalo robe. And so she was wrapped in that robe, that buffalo blanket, to keep her warm. And she knew that the final promise was that she would have not very long to stay in this place. And so as she descended, all of the animals that were already here, a few of the birds had seen her as she was descending. And, you know, started to follow her down, and some of them flew ahead to alert any of the other animals, any of the other fish that were already in existence, or any of the other sea animals that were there, that this new being was descending from the sky. This woman, this Star Woman, was coming down, and she was the first of her kind. And so as she was descending, they knew that she, even if she were able to swim, she wouldn't be able to exist in the water and live in the water. Not for very long anyway. So they, you know, began to talk to the other animals. And so one of the animals to offer assistance to Sky Woman was Jiknach, the turtle. So she offered this assistance to Passamaquoddy, to the Star Woman, and offered to let her ride on her back as they figured out what else they were going to do for their home, for her home. So as Passamaquoddy sits there on the back of this giant turtle in the middle of the ocean, wrapped in her buffalo robe with all of these other animals swimming up to her and Jiknach to introduce themselves, to learn where she had come from, to learn why she was there. They began to, you know, realize that she would need a place to live. And where she landed so far in the middle of the ocean, so far from the few places of landmass that did exist, you know, they knew it was going to be difficult for her. So they began to talk about what they could do, what plans they could do. And they were talking about how way at the bottom of Zubeg, way at the bottom of the ocean, there was lots and lots of dupquan. And this dupquan at the bottom of the ocean, at the bottom of Zubeg, could be used if they could retrieve it. And Passamaquoddy could use her medallion, could use her spiritual powers to manipulate that dupquan and create a home for herself. So a few of the animals tried and failed, and they, you know, weren't able to swim all the way to the bottom of the ocean. And one animal that volunteered was Gilhus, the muskrat, who we've heard in one of our stories today already. And so Gilhus volunteered to go, and many of the animals doubted him because he was so much smaller than them. But he was one of the fastest swimmers, and he was able to carry the clay with his hands, to carry that dupquan with his hands. So they waited, and they gave him the chance, and they had waited for such a long time that they were sure he wasn't going to return. They were sure he was going to drown, or he had drowned. And so some of the other animals began to dive below the surface to look for him, to see if they could see him anywhere in the water, see him on his way back up. And it was Gilnik, the otter, who found Gilhuz's body, and he found him. He brought him to Chiknokch's shell so that Passamaquoddy could embrace him. And so she brought him out of the water, and he had drowned trying to retrieve this dupquan. You know, his body was cold and stiff, and his eyes were cold. Eyes were closed, and many of the animals began to mourn him, and were very sad and very saddened by his loss. But Gilnik pointed out that Gilhuz's hand was very tightly closed. He said, "Well, what's in his hand?" So Passamaquoddy gently opened his hand, and inside was just one small clump of dupquan. So she took that dupquan and she began to turn it back and forth in her hands. And as she turned it back and forth, the dupquan began to grow in volume. It began to almost multiply and become a bigger piece of this clay that came from the deepest part of Zubet. And this ball became so heavy that she needed to place it down in the middle of Chiknokch's shell. And she started to spread it out with her feet. And as she spread it with her feet, she started to kind of develop a rhythm to tap this clay down and spread it out over Chiknokch's shell. And everywhere the clay touched Chiknokch's shell started to expand and grow. And she had to start moving in a circle, moving around so that she could keep spreading that dupquan as it multiplied and keep spreading it across Chiknokch's shell as it grew. And so she started her dance around Chiknokch's shell, and she started to tap her feet and move back and forth wrapped in her buffalo robe, or move not back and forth, but around in that circle. And that circle just kept getting bigger and bigger. So she was dancing in this spiral until Chiknokch had become so large that she could no longer see from one side of Chiknokch to the other. She could no longer see the ocean on either side of her. And as she danced, the humps in Chiknokch's shell grew into giant mountains. The crevices deepened and filled with water and soil, and became river-filled valleys with trees and forests. All of these other rivers formed, lakes formed, mountains. The flattest parts of her shell became these great, expansive, flat plains where the sky was so big it was almost overwhelming. So in this way, Passamaquoddy, Star Woman or Sky Woman, Aluquiapid, I know that would be Cloud Woman, but Star Woman, Passamaquoddy, had created Turtle Island, created Chiknokchi Munahan. And this was where she was going to make her home. So as a thank you to Gilhuz, she scooped Gilhuz back up as many of these animals came out of the ocean and climbed onto Chiknokch's now immeasurable back, like this huge island had formed. And they climbed out of the ocean to explore this new place. And so she embraced Gilhuz's body, Passamaquoddy embraced his body, and as a thank you, she used one of her gifts that she would eventually pass on to one of her sons, or to one of her children. She used the breath of life, and she brought Gilhuz back from the dead. She breathed his spirit right back into his body. And Gilhuz took a deep breath and was brought back, and she made him the promise that, in addition to bringing him back to this plane, bringing him back to this earth, he would be able to choose wherever he wanted to live on Turtle Island. And wherever he wanted to live, there would be plenty of gilhuzwask growing there, that flag root, that muskrat root, for him to eat, because they knew that it was his favorite and preferred food. And wherever he chose to live, there would be so few predators that naturally hunted him, and even fewer that were naturally able to catch him, that he would always be able to have big families. And those big families would have big families of their own. So Gilhuz was promised that he would always have plenty of food and safe homes with lots of water to swim in, lots of gilhuzwask to eat, and that he would always have lots of children and grandchildren for as long as Turtle Island was in existence. And so now all throughout the Northeast, all throughout our freshwater lakes, rivers, bogs, landlocked ponds, even some of our smallest puddles that you might not ever think in the deepest parts of the woods would ever have gilhuz in them. They found their way there. They found their way to places where they might not normally be, or you might not expect them to be. And they live their plentiful lives. And so Sky Woman had her place to live. Sasmoyapid had her place to be, had her place to stay, her place that she could exist in this realm. And that was a big part of her purpose. A big part of her purpose was to create Turtle Island, to create this place, to create a place where many of these animals and eventually the first people would be able to come and live, would be able to exist and be able to make their own homes. And so her other part of this purpose was to come here and continue bringing other souls here by bringing in, the first soul who was going to bring in the rest of humanity. And we've heard him in our stories already. We've heard him of Galuska, or as I often refer to him as Galuska, the first man, the bringer of truth. And so a lot of our stories will say that he created himself from the earth. And I've heard one particular story that Galwazid created him by striking the earth 7 times in the same spot with lightning. And that was how Galuskap's consciousness made it here. But the part of the story, that I've received kind of in my own research and both in my own ceremony, in receiving visions and ceremonies and as a storyteller, is that both of these things are true. Galuska, or all 3 of these things are true. I guess I would say Galuska did create himself. Galuska was created by Galwazid, and Galuska was the son of Star Woman. Galuska came in the form of this bright light to grow inside the body of Star Woman. And when this bright light created itself, it also cast a shadow inside of Star Woman. And that shadow from all of this Magellan took on a spirit form of its own. So Galuska and his twin, Malsum, were created at the same time. And we're going to be born at the same time. And because they were made of such different energies, different but necessary energies, necessary for the cycles that we're going to continue in this place and be part of, the overall functioning of this plane, that cycle of life and death, that cycle of light and dark, that cycle of night and day, is what these twins very much represented, Galuskab and Malsum. So these two opposing energies were coming to this world at the same time. And when it came time for them to be born, Gluskab was speaking, and I'll be using, based on one of the teachings that I've gotten from my elder Mi'kmaq, is that Malsum, they believe Malsum, Gluskab's twin, was actually his twin sister. So I'm going to be, and I tried to use she, her pronouns when referring to her in my storytelling now from Malsum. Because they're looking at, the etymology and the teachings of that word Malsum, specifically meaning the blood carrier. So with Gluskab being the first man, the first woman, was Sky Woman, but Gluskab's sister was the blood carrier. She was Malsum. She was the represented the end of that cycle, the completion of that cycle, the completion of life, the completion of and the continuation of those things. So Gluskab made from that light, and his twin sister made from that shadow. We're going to be born at the same time. And so Malsum asked Gluskab, how will you be born? How are you going to be born? And Gluskab thought that was an odd question. And he said, well, I'll be born in the way I'm intended to be born. This, I will be born in the way everybody else is going to be intended to be born. The usual way is fine enough for me. I'll be born from our mother. And Malsum said, well, I will not be born in the same way, because our paths are not the same, and our energies are not the same, our purposes are not the same. And so my birth is going to reflect me. It's going to reflect my purpose. And it's not going to be the same as yours. And some versions of the story, they particularly demonize Malsum and say that, Malsum wanted his birth to be extraordinary because Malsum believed himself to be extraordinary. In all of these versions where Malsum is depicted as this male who didn't want to look like Gluskab, and so depicted himself as a wolf instead. But when Malsum was born, Gluskab was born in the same way that most of us were born. Each of us was born the way that we were intended to be born from our mothers. But instead, Malsum clung to Passamaquoddy's insides, and she held on tight. And instead of being born from her mother the way that it was intended, she began to rip and tear her way through Passamaquoddy's side. And she actually came out of her rib cage, born from her mother that way, causing such pain and damage to Passamaquoddy's body that she wasn't even able to remain on this plane after that traumatic event. That was the end of her journey here, was giving birth to Malsum. So while Gluskab brought life with him, Malsum literally brought death and brought that energy to this place. So Malsum and Gluskab were left without their mother and left on top of her buffalo robe. And so with no mother to guide them in this place, they were not given any time to remain as children or to remain as infants. They had to be humans. They had to be adults to be able to do what they needed to do. And eventually that Passamaquoddy spirit, her spirit would become reincarnated to keep guiding Gluskab and to teach Gluskab, to teach him the way to go. And she would reincarnate as Munimquas. She would come back and reincarnate as an old woman, as his grandmother, to teach Gluskab those lessons. But when Malsum and Galuskab were left here, they were left with that robe. And on the back of that robe was painted a particular design. It was the 7-pointed star. And the 7-pointed star represented the 7 stars in the Pleiades cluster, or the Pleiades constellation, which we refer to as the hole in the sky, Star Woman's origins. So those 7 points represented those 7 stars that make the hole in the sky. And when Passamaquoddy left this plane, when she left her body here and left that gift here and returned back to Spumkig, that design altered and it changed. And an 8th point appeared on the star. So that 8-pointed star specifically represented the 7 stars in Pleiades and the 8th point for Star Woman herself, to remind us where it is that we came from as Indigenous people, as Wabanaki, as Algonquin people, so that we would never forget, who that grandmother was, who that first woman was. And so at this part of the story, things really start to pick up for Galuskab. This is where what I like to refer to as the Galuskab Chronicles begin, where Galuskab needs to learn how to survive in this place, how to get the tools that he needs to survive in this place, how to interact with the animals in a respectful way, how to interact with the other spirits here in a respectful way, how to provide for his grandmother when she does arrive to guide him, and more importantly, to provide for his nephew when his nephew arrives, to be able to provide for him as well. So all of these stories start, and one flows into another, like big pieces of a chapter book, where certain things start to lead up to the creation of the world as we know it today. We have that foundation laid down by Passamaquoddy, by Galuskab's mother, by Galuskab and Malsum's mother. And so while Galuskab was sent with this purpose of creating Wabanaki people, Malsum had the opposite of that purpose, and had that energy that is the energy of death, that often gets so manipulated and conflated with evil, the same way that darkness is conflated with evil. But in the way that Galuskab was here to start off that creation, his twin was here to be the opposite energy, and to have that end of creation energy, the end of the cycle. And so Galuskab, wanted to create these people and knew that it was part of his purpose. And we heard from our elder Niskipisuwin about his first fast when Manimgras sent him to the east and told him to be by the ocean for 4 days, which led to him making the first bow and making the first arrow and asking Moors for that backstrap sinew, to be able to string it. And so before this, before Galuskab is on this mission and gets those instructions and finds that tree, he first attempted to create stone people on his own, or create the first people on his own. And he was by the ocean here in the east, and he knew that he had this gift that was the breath of life that he had inherited from his mother, and would be part of what he used to give birth to these people, to bring them to this plane, to make this creation. And so as he was at the beach on the coast, he picks up these tiny pebbles. Well, a tiny pebble for us, but with Gluskab in his great size, it's still about a boulder for us, a decent, pretty big rock for us. Not a boulder, but a rock. He picks up these little pebbles from his perspective, and he's holding one back and forth in his hands, and he talks to this stone. And in our stories, they make sure to emphasize that Gluskab can talk to all of the creatures in creation. Gluskab can speak to all of these creatures, and to all of these spirits, except one. There's only one creature that Gluskab can't talk to, and I'm not sure why, but I always make sure to bring it up, hoping that one day I'll find the reason. But Gluskab, and it's very specific to mention it, that Gluskab can't speak to clams. Gluskab doesn't speak, and I don't know why that's significant, but maybe one day I'll learn if I just keep telling it as part of the story. So Gluskab can talk to every being in creation except clams. They're the only ones who can talk without Gluskab being able to understand what they're saying. So Gluskab was speaking to the stone, and he talked to the stone, and he said, how would you like to be a Mohawk? A person, a Mohawk, one who walks on the surface. How would you like to not be a Benapsk? You can be a Mohawk. And that stone nodded and agreed, and said, yes, I would like that very much. So Gluskab used the breath of life. Breathed onto the stone. And when he breathed onto the stone, these eyes opened, and this face appeared, and little arms appeared, and little legs appeared, very similar to Gluskab's form, but in much, much smaller form, much, much smaller scale. And so this little person appeared, this little rock person. The first of the Winogamasizuk, or the Dumdum-Sizuk, was created. And so Gluskab saw how curious this thing was, and how fast, and how overall happy, if not a little bit mischievous. So he picked up another stone, and he created another Winogamasizuk. So those Winogamasizuk were running around on the beach, checking out this world that they'd never been able to explore because they didn't have legs or eyes or arms. And so Gluskab thought this was going quite well, so he picked up all of these stones, a whole handful. And hundreds of Winogamasizuk jumped into existence. They began to build their little fires, and build their little huts, and build their little rock dwellings on the coasts. And Gluskab was happy and celebrating with them as they were beating their drums and singing. And eventually, as Gluskab got caught up in this celebration, I was told I had 90 minutes to talk.
That's closed captioning. It's not time for you.
Oh, okay. I was like, what? I was like, time? What did I do?
You said time, so somebody typed it.
Okay. So Gluskab had created all of these Winogamasizuk. And so when he created these Winogamasizuk, he gets caught up in this celebration with them, and gets caught up in that excitement of their own creation. And when he looks down again, they'd all taken off. These Winogamasizuk had gone up and down the coasts, and up and down the riverbeds, and to make their own villages, to have their own families, and to create their own little societies. And so Gluskab thought, well, maybe I need to make slightly larger stone people so that they're not so easy to lose. And he approached these boulders. And so he breathed on one of these boulders. The first stone person that was about our size was created. And they looked very similar to us, except that many of their facial features were still made out of stone, as if they were carved straight from the rock. So these first stone people were then created, and they were calmer than the Winogamaski, so not as fast, not as speedy or mischievous, a little bit slower moving. And so Gluskab created a few more and watched as they, continued that pattern of going up and down the coasts to make their own societies, going up and down the riverbeds. And so Gluskab had created all of these people, and being of such a great size, he didn't want to be lonely, and he didn't want to be the only person in all of existence that was this giant, that was this giant man this giant being of a man. So he approached a mountain. And when he approached this mountain, he gave it the breath of life. And the first stone giant opened its eyes. And Gluskab was very careful with these stone giants. He'd only created 2, maybe 3 of them at first. And it was a good thing that he was careful, because the one thing that he didn't know, the one thing he didn't account for, the piece of information that he would have received had he fasted first, had he gotten that ceremony first, had to do this ceremony properly, would be that stones don't have hearts. They aren't able to feel love or compassion. They're very cold and stubborn and often unmovable. But they can become heated, they can become angry, and when they become hot, they become destructive. They can set fire, they can crack, they can burn. And so that anger becomes something that is very destructive for them. So when these stone giants became angry, they stayed angry, and they went on these rampages throughout the Dawnland, killing entire villages of animals, ripping tree people out by their roots and leaving them to die. Just constant death and destruction wherever they went. And so many of the animals approached Gluskab and begged him to do something about his children, the stone giants, that were destroying everything. So it wasn't difficult for him to track his children down. He found them just by following the paths of bodies of the tree people and the animals that they left behind them. And he wrestled each one of these stone giants to the ground, here on the eastern edge of Turtle Island, and had these great fights with them. And as he had these fights, damaging their bodies and bruising his own, he wrestled each one to the ground. And when he finally defeated each one individually, he would hold them close, hold their face right close to his, and he said, "Muskayan Nijan, and help them win. I'm sorry, my child, forgive me. You've abused the gift that I've given you, and I have to take it back." And so Gluskab held each of those giants close. And he took back the breath of life. So the eyes of the giants closed, and their stone features would smooth over back into rock. Their bodies had become so damaged in the fight with Gluskab that they crumbled apart and rolled into the sea. And all of the other mountains that had been destroyed in the fight with Gluskab had also landed in the sea, becoming these big chunks. All of these hundreds and thousands of islands that we have on the coast here today. All of that was destruction from the stone giants and the process of their uncreation. And so Gluskab had made such a big mistake with those stone people. He was worried about the other stone people that he'd created. Some of these stone people, the ones that were about our size, actually went to Gluskab and volunteered. You know, they offered to give that breath of life back, because they knew that Gluskab would one day go looking for them, because they saw the destruction that their giant younger siblings had caused. Some of them, however, did not offer to be uncreated. They stayed hidden. They remained hidden from Gluskab. They remained hidden until after Wabanaki people were created and they began to integrate with us. Once their stone features had smoothed over and they became the stone people became irrecognizable from the tree people that were eventually created. And with the smallest stone people, the Winogomasizo, Gluskab didn't find any of them. They're still up and down our coast today, still all along our lakes and rivers, living in their rock dwellings, causing mischief, stealing our belongings as a way of teaching us lessons. And so this stone people journey for Gluskab had gone so awry that he was so doubtful that he should use his gift again. And even the other animals were doubtful that he should use his gift again. You know, they didn't want the same mistake to be created. But Gluskab had known that he had to try again. And he had those instructions from his grandmother to fast for 4 days and 4 nights. And so he finds that tree because he first, hears the sound. He knows which tree it is because he hears this. He's looking for this tree to make that bow from, to make that arrow from, and following this noise. And as he gets closer to this one tree, Wick, the ash tree, like it gets much louder. And he puts his hand on that tree and he can feel the sound reverberating from inside. He can feel that tree's heartbeat, the heartbeat of the earth coming from Wick. And so he knows that tree will, that tree has a heart. It has the ability to feel. It has the ability to love. And so he makes his bow, he makes his arrow, following the instructions of those spirits that had come to whisper to him during his fast. And so he approaches the coast, and when the first light appears, he turns to face the tree. And as that first light touches the tops of the tree, touches those leaves, he fires his arrow, and that ash tree split clean in half. And so as spirit, or that tree got split in half, so did that spirit of the tree itself, this powerful spirit, the spirit of this tree with this heartbeat. The spirit that was one had now been split into two. Two separate beings that were able to think and feel on their own. So Gluskab approached the tree and he approached these two spirits. that were once the one spirit of the ash tree, and he says to them, I have an offer for you. I have an offer for a gift, but it's more of a trade. I will give you the breath of life. I will transform you into a Passamaquoddy, a surface walker, in exchange for the promise that you will always take care of this place. You will take care of the land. You will take care of the water. Take care of the animals that live here with you. I've learned how to live in harmony with them and the rest of nature, and I will teach those things to you. And you need to teach your children, and they need to teach their children. And when they're eventually visitors to this place, you need to teach them as well. You need to keep those teachings going. That is the exchange. That's the gift. In exchange for you making that promise, I will give you the breath of life. And so the spirit said, Drew, we promise. And so Kaluska breathed onto the ash tree. And from one side of the tree stepped the first Wabanaki woman. And from the other side stepped the first Wabanaki man, side by side, at the same time. Woman and man, masculine and feminine. And so they walked away from the tree, and the Medowlin from Kaluska and that tree continued to make more people, more men and women came from that tree, deep from the roots, as Pasasm said. Women from one side, men from the other. Elderly men and elderly women, boys and girls. And so after all of the Wabanaki people had exited the tree, it started to wander farther and farther from it, from that source of their creation. And so Kaluskab sees that there were tiny pieces of each of those spirits left, tiny pieces of the spirit that would become man and the spirit that would become woman left in either side of the tree. And so Kaluskab took those pieces and recombined them, because there was just enough left that if they were rejoined, if they were reconnected to each other, it will be enough to create one last person. And so Kaluskab recombined those energies, and out from the tree, from the very center, stepped the first Niskipisuwin, the first Niziminduin, the first two-spirit, the first person created with an equal balance of masculine and feminine energies. An equal balance that had a ripple effect on the world around them. That when they balance those polarizing energies, it not only gives them the gift of creation, the ability to create as our creator, and as Kaluskab had done, they had the ability to bring balance to the world around them. And so that person that occupied the space in between, Niskipisuwin, was created, and they were at the very end of the line of all of the men and women and children in position there, so that they would be able to remind Wabanaki people of our own creation, to not only see where it was that our people were headed, but to be able to look behind and see where we had come from and remain close and connected to the source of that creation, to that spirit world. And while each and every other man and woman has been separated from that other half of their spirit, some Wabanaki teachings teach that there is a soulmate in that way, because many of us have been separated. The other part of that teaching would be that two spirits have not been separated from half of their spirit. They've been sent with that whole balance of masculine and feminine energies. And so that means that our roles in our communities were very different. At the end of the line, we had to make sure that all of the children went the right way, that they didn't lose sight of where the adults were going. And so two spirits would have to learn the jobs, the gender roles of both sexes, of both men and women, in order to teach all of the children what it was that they needed to know to be functioning members of our societies. We were spiritual advisors because we had that extra connection to the spirit world. We played dual roles. We were warriors that walked healers' paths and healers that walked warriors' paths. Couples counselors. This idea of us bringing balance to our communities and to the world around us was integral to our societal and our spiritual roles within Wabanaki culture. And so one of the things that I learned as I got my pipe and as I have communicated with my pipe and bonded with it, is that, men and women have to go through different ceremonies, different purification ceremonies, to be able to connect to different energies. Oftentimes men are meant to go through sweat lodges to be able to really connect to that feminine energy, because they're going back into the womb and connecting to those those feminine energies that they need to learn from, that they've been disconnected from. They're learning to balance those energies so that when they do connect their pipe and their stem, that bowl representing feminine energy and the stem representing masculine energy, they have that energy balance within themselves. And so if that's true for men and for women, then that would mean that two spirits have that ability innately. Two spirits are already a connected pipe, so to speak. And so each of us needs to bring those energies into balance within ourselves. And that is the teaching that comes from two-spirit medicine, the teaching that comes from that act of creation, in that way that creation started because of the combination of those masculine and feminine energies. So two spirits are creators because the creator is two spirit. And even Gluskab and his ability to create, his ability to be connected and to transform, his romantic relationship with a Gwimp, the loon, a lot of those things point to that not only was Gluskab the first man, and Gluskab and his family represent all of the sides of Wabanaki spirituality or Wabanaki culture that we need to survive. We have our children, we have our elders, we have and women that are represented by his by Gluskab's grandmother, and so they're an integral part of our society is the women and the elders, and then his children are represented by his nephew, And while Gluskab represents adulthood, you know, that part of that medicine wheel, that journey, that part of our societies, Mi'kmaq Two-Spirit elders say that Gluskab was also the very first Two-Spirit, and he represents bringing that energy to this plane and bringing that ability to create life as a man to this plane. And so what everybody is meant to take from that is that that balance is going to be different for everybody. And many of these teachings have been so demonized. So many people in our stories are, if there are any mention of trans people in our stories or gender fluid stories, it's always equated to witchcraft, but in a demonizing Christian way and not in, you know, a powerful spiritual way, as it was intended to be from the beginning. So each of us has to find that balance for ourselves because it's different for everybody. And, you know, while Two-Spirit is what we would call a closed term that is, you know, reserved for Native queer people, broadly to put it, you know, that is our term to use, and that's going to be different in different communities. That doesn't mean that you can't learn from that medicine and be healed by that medicine and find that balance for yourself. And so what I would like to offer, you know, in closing with that, which is 30 minutes short of 90 minutes that I was promised Sherry. I just want to leave you all with a song today. And it's one of my favorite songs to sing. I often sing it at this ceremony, and will probably be asked to sing it again, but that's not going to stop me from singing it now. This is the Children's Honor Song, sung in the Skijinawadawewagin, in the Weskaramuka language. And it is a song that is a prayer to the spirit of the eagle, the spirit of, you know, Creator's messenger, to search for children, for Indigenous children that are lost, to find them, to bring them home, to give them medicine, to give them the healing. And so I like to sing this song in this portion and in my contribution for the ceremony as a way of offering a blessing, offering an honoring to all of the Two Spirits, whether they're listening right now or not. You know, to let you know that there was a time on Turtle Island and in many other places where you would have been embraced, celebrated, honored, and allowed to follow your own path, and encouraged to do so, most importantly. And while it doesn't seem like we're quite in that time yet, we're returning to a place where it's going to be like that again. And so this song is my blessing to you now, and my blessing, you know, to your inner child that should have received this but didn't. Away, away, oh hey, way 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 oh hey. Mosum suiji plaga, yalid we ad yotskit komel, naji giluahan, wazizok, wazizok, away oh hey, away oh hey. Way oh hey, 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 way oh hey. Musum suiji plagan, yalid we ad yudskit komel. Muskoan wazizok, yuktuk wazizok, away oh hey, away oh hey, way oh hey, away oh hey, way oh hey, away oh hey. Way oh hey, way oh hey, musum suiji plagan, yaladwiad yudskit komel, wajukeman wazizok, yuktuk wazizok, away oh hey, away oh hey. Way oh hey, 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 way oh hey. Mosum suiji plaga, yalid we ad yudskit komel. Milan knobizon, yuktuk wazizok, away oh hey, away oh hey, way oh hey, away oh hey, way oh hey, away oh hey. Way oh hey, way oh hey. Musum suiji plagan, yalid we ad yudskit komil, gakimanski genue, wazizok, wazizok. Away oh hey, away oh hey, way 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 oh hey, away oh hey, way oh hey, way oh hey, way oh hey. Way oh hey, way oh hey, way oh hey, way oh hey. Nukmasok nagamosum sok. Chivali wancho larbewagan gazimen wakiak chumnilan. Chinimas nagak chimendo. Chivali wan chobamosuagan nagapsidek nilawagan. Chivali wan nukmas nibauset naga musum saspirauset chobamosuagan. Chivali wan. Zamagwan, Kachiviliwan, Skit Comic, Kachiviliwan, Chico, Jobamoso, Chiwin, Amoazwo, Nagawayo Siso, Nagazipsiso, Jobamoso, Chiwin, Wenogamasiso, Chiwin, Gugach, Chiwin, Lampek, Winwog, Naga Abu Damkan, Jogino at Dogano, Jomila Wagano, Joknabizon, Naga Chiwin, Gansos, Jogino at Dogano, Kiziman Raki up to Milan. Milan urged to catch Naladam and enter what Kovazite. Idlage, 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 Idlage. And damn soap, Tahoe, Chiwilliwan.
Williwan, Niskipisuwin, thank you for those beautiful stories and those teachings. No matter how old I am, I sit and listen to the younger ones, and we can all learn from each other. We all learn these important teachings and understandings. Thank you so much for sharing that. Joining us next is Dr. David Ragland. He's co-founder of the Truth Telling Project and director of the Grassroots Repatriation Campaign. So, Dr. Ragland, you can feel free to join in at any time at this point.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure. And just speaking after such beautiful offerings, it comes to mind that before I speak, I want to honor my ancestors. Right before I got on this call, I was talking to my mother, and she was talking about my grandmother Thelma, my grandmother Goldie, my grandmother Cora, and I want to honor those ancestors and honor Indigenous ancestors of this land that I am on right now, and offer that acknowledgement as a prayer. I also want to honor my non-human ancestors and relatives. And I am feeling song right now, and I want to offer just a short offering. I know they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching, I know. I know they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching, I know. I like to bring my ancestors into any conversation that I have around reparations and healing. The work that I'm engaged in and is around truth and reparations, and I had the honor to work with families who had been victimized and experienced police violence, to do truth-telling process, and which for many was really healing and supportive. And out of that work, I began working with faith communities and churches and synagogues, looking at reparations as a spiritual practice. And we began really trying to understand and look at reparations as healing both moral and material harm. And the harm that we are trying to heal is the harm to our planet, but also the harm to people, especially when we think about slavery and colonization as world shaping and making events that essentially live with us today, that we live in, that we are sometimes suffering from, sometimes benefiting from. And we began to think about how fractured our nation is politically and socially. And that's why we began working with faith communities around this. And one of the faith communities that I had a chance to work with was in Stony Point, New York. And the Presbytery there made reparations to the Ramapola Napi by, as they were closing one of the churches, they, rather than sell it, they wanted to return it to the descendants of the indigenous folk in that community. And the powerful thing that the Ramapola Napi were able to do was to create the Sweetwater Cultural Institute. And that location is also a mission. They've offered it as a mission to the United Nations for indigenous groups. But some of the other work that we have been championing and working on in the Grassroots Reparations Campaign is looking at reparations as a spiritual practice. And if we think about reparations as more than money or a return of land, but the United Nations describes reparations in 4 areas. One is compensation, but the other, 5 areas. Compensation is one, but healing as another area that looks at the mental anguish and intergenerational trauma that occurs, and also the theft or demonization of traditional religions. All of that has to be healed. And another area under this understanding of reparations is satisfaction, which looks like education and memorial building and the kind of healing processes that are necessary as a result of slavery and colonization and genocide. That education in some places has looked like removing memorials to the Confederacy, or changing the names of sports teams, right? From indigenous names that were meant to denigrate indigenous communities. One of the other areas is also restitution or return of what was stolen. And for me, as we're living out climate catastrophe and climate change, one of the most important areas of reparations is guarantees of non-repeat. How do we not repeat this past harm, this ongoing harm? And when you're asking and thinking about healing, and people are continuously revisited with harm, how does that happen? And I think many ways what we're doing here, this healing, transforming ourselves, to consider ourselves as a part of nature as opposed to over, and but also it is, how are we invested? How do we use our money? How do we use our energy, and are we invested in our retirement accounts in extractive investments like oil and gas producing places that are our governments are drilling on treaty land, and we may be morally opposed to that, but many of our retirement accounts and even products that we buy support industries that hurt and injure humanity. And if we're looking at, and I view reparations as a spiritual practice, and this land has made money so important to us all. And if we imagine money as energy that we put out, how do we redirect that energy so it is healing rather than extractive? And some of the work that we're doing around this is supporting faith communities to redirect their investments, and supporting individuals to think about divesting from injustice as a spiritual practice, as part of a spiritual practice. And I think part of the unraveling is that material work and the spiritual work of reconnecting with our ancestors, the ones who did good things and the ones who did bad things, not as a place of shame, but a place of acknowledgement and remembrance, so that we can be more connected, so that we can heal the past and face these legacies. And so I think in this moment of remembering, it's important to acknowledge our ancestors and remember and heal from good and harmful legacies. And one of the things, I can hear a flock of geese in my background, and it's powerful. And some of the ways that we help communities enact reparations as a spiritual practice and build a culture of repair involves traditions that we've began to help communities create, like Reparations Sunday. So twice a year, faith communities around the country acknowledge and learn from this history and work to repair and heal communities surrounding them. And we've been excited that over 400 congregations have participated in Reparations Sunday to date. I'm going to pause here and welcome what I've offered for questions, and just refer you to our website, grassrootsreparations.org, if you'd like more information, and I can chat that out too.
David, we don't have the questions on, so nobody's been able to type any questions in. So I don't think, I'm not sure how we would do that, because where we're in a webinar, we don't have it set.
I can also share another website with you called reparationsunday.org. And if you click on that, you can also see one of the campaigns that we're working on in Savannah, Georgia. One of the areas of satisfaction in the 5 areas of reparations that I named, satisfaction is changing names of memorials and monuments. And in Savannah, Georgia, one of our partners asked us to support them in this work. And what they're trying to do is change the name of Calhoun Square to Susie King Taylor Square, because John Calhoun was 7th Vice President of the United States and also an infamous slaver. And the community learned that beneath the square is an African burial ground. And I think this is one of the ways that we can support healing for our communities and to redress historical wrongs. And those are some simple things, and they're part of it. They're reparative. They're not the full piece, but that's some of what we're doing. And I can also share, in case you're wondering, like some of the deeper pieces of why we created a campaign around reparations that focuses on spirituality and faith communities, is because of the ways that during slavery of our traditional religions were suppressed. And my own practice around ancestors is around reclaiming a history that was stolen and faith that was stolen. And when we launched our campaign in 2019, for me and for so many people around me, it felt like we were not just joining this call for reparations because of these historical traumas. We felt like we were inviting our nation into repair. Like, what does repair look like? It looks like accountability for the past that is ongoing in so many institutions. But we felt it was 2019, it was 400 years since Black people have been brought to these lands in chains and forced to transform the American landscape, clearing land for agriculture and industry, building those industries, being forced to participate in the extraction of our natural lands, of our relatives, and in the harm and the trauma. And it was also at that year, 2019, was 50 years since the Black Manifesto, when the civil rights activist James Foreman went to Riverside Church and demanded reparations to faith communities for their participation in slavery and discrimination. And it was also 40 years since the Greensboro Truth Commission. And for me, and I haven't shared this outside of friend groups, and Sherry knows this. But before 2019, I had a continuous dream about Black people wearing white, going to the river. And to me, that came out to be a call to reach back out to and reconnect with my ancestors. And it also made me or brought up the question, what kind of spirituality do we need for liberation? And I think in this moment, how do we connect to each other and our ancestors and own fully who we are without shame, but with acknowledgement that their lives, their struggle, the reasons why they did what they did, the choices that were made were for us, for our survival, for our flourishing. And that it may not have, some much caused harm, some didn't, some fought against harm. But in this moment, for me, reparations means a commitment to deep spirituality, deep unraveling of complicity in harm in any form. Our planet is demanding it. And the unraveling is a spiritual process, practice of reconnection. And that reconnection, I think, has the potential to bubble up, to be spread outward, so our society can be accountable. And when there's accountability, there can be healing. And I'm gonna stop here and just thank my ancestors and this land that I'm on for providing for me and my family, and wish healing on you all, and thanks for hearing what I've said and come to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Very important message, and it's really important that we hear what's happening in different places and different realms. It's all important. We're all connected, and it's just really encouraging and supporting to hear all the good work you're doing where you are, and the ramifications it will have on a broader audience later on down the road. Such a great movement. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate it. So next speaker that we have in line is Letecia. Letecia, are you all set to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to offer gratitude for all the words that were offered up until now. And David, such important work that you're doing. One of the things that I recognized last night as I was listening is our people, our ancestors, our shared ancestors, going back far and far, have all been touched by colonialism, imperialism. And Sherry reminded us about entering into the south gate of spiritual and emotional healing. And that we're speaking our words into being, to be very conscious of the words that we choose to speak. My heart has been open with all of the stories that have been shared, the creation stories, the suffering and the pain and the remembering. Let us not forget so that it should never, ever happen again. Last night, Beverly Little Thunder reminded us that we're the 7th generation that someone prayed for, and that gives me hope. In part of my bio, it says that I'm a futurist. You know, in our lives, we each have a role to play. And just for a moment, I would like for you to just consider, some of you know what that role is because you're living it now. And some of you are asking the question, who are my people? And how can I offer my gifts? I want to offer gratitude to Sherry for the vision that she had and all of the elders that have brought us together around this literal and virtual fire. I was up this morning at, I got confused about the time, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm actually not in the state or in the time zone that I was born in. So I was confused about what time to get up because today is my birthday. And every year on my birthday, I get up and I offer gratitude and prayers as a personal practice, and then ask for blessings and vision and oracle that I can think about for this next year of how I take my work out into the world. Or what is it that I need to learn so that I can give my gift completely with an open hand? And what do I need to learn to be able to lay down my ego so that I can stand tall with my spirit up front? Last night I shared with you that my ancestors come from the Philippines. And I mentioned that there are 7,650 something islands. When I first started presenting to the world about my ancestry, we had only used a number that was 7,107 islands. So in the last 20 years, they remapped and took a look at the land. So the earth herself is either rising up to greet us, to create more islands, or we're just getting better at finding each other. And I'm grateful for that. The Philippines is part of the Ring of Fire. For those of you who may not know what that means, there's a ring of volcanoes that actually help dissipate the energy from the core of the earth. And it's those ongoing upswing of the molten lava that actually creates the body of the earth above the ocean floor itself. Most people don't have a lot of background in who the Filipinos are as a people and how we came to be there. We have over 150 tribes, that many languages in the Philippines. But I just want to give you a little bit of a timeline so you have an idea. Just in 2018, there was a new discovery that they found ancient rhinoceros bones that had been cut with stone implements that dated back, carbon dated 709,000 years ago. The earliest human or proto-human that was discovered was 100,000 years ago in the Cagayan cave in the Philippines. About 400,000 years ago, they found the bones of the first Homo erectus in our island's archipelago. About 250,000 years ago, there was habitation in the islands. About 55,000 years ago, they found bones from actual Homo sapiens. 50,000 years ago was when they began to see burials that were done in Palawan in clay pots and stone tools. About 40,000 years ago, there was a population of peoples that looked like the bush people or the Aborigines that we called negritos, very small, short, African features. 35,000 years ago, we moved into a place called Papangan, and about 5,000 years ago, from the coast of Africa up through Asia, a wave came through of peoples that were called the Austronesians. And the last place to be populated in the world was the archipelago that came across the wave that took about 5,000 years that swept down from Asia down into Micronesia, and then it went across back up again about 1,000 years ago to Hawaii. And the Hawaiians actually were linked, the Pacific Plate, to the California coast. So the Chumash people where I lived in their territory for a bit, their language has direct same words that are part of the Hawaiian language. The Hawaiian language is part of this language family called Austronesian. And the interesting thing about the Austronesian peopling is that there's something that's called the Wallace Divide in the Pacific, in the ocean there. And to the east of the Wallace line, you'll see Austronesian male and female mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome DNA. But to the west of the Wallace line, you don't see any male Y chromosome of the Austronesians. So if you ever saw the story of Moana, that animated movie, you'll see that the seafarers actually came across, and they did some studies with DNA to find the oldest matrifocal, matrilineal villages around Indonesia. And they found that these women would leave their homes, and the oldest mother said, yes, we send the women out when they're ready to make their own families. And so the women actually, the idea is that the women left on boats and sailed all the way down, because the Austronesian languages, the mother tongues, actually eclipsed all the way down into Micronesia. So I come from a culture that's very rooted in the mother, very rooted in our language and an orientation of what it means to have relationships. Science is catching up with what our ancient ancestors have said, which is in the grandmother, your grandmother, she had your mother in her womb who had the egg of you inside your grandmother when your mother was growing inside of her. So we have this direct lineage that comes through this line of the mother. And it is very interesting to understand that. The other thing that is interesting in the science that's been discovered around the 1990s is that women, our DNA changes quite a bit. But the mitochondrial DNA, which is in every cell of our bodies, And that is an organelle that's female, that's inherited through the mother line. So it's inherited by the women and it's inherited by the men. And you get it only from your own mother. And that DNA can trace all the way back to the very beginning of life on planet Earth. That was one of the first single-celled organisms on the planet that actually allows us to convert our food to energy. So the energy of the mother is inside of us. The energy of the mother is part of the original, what Sherry talks about as sacred instructions on the planet. And the mitochondrial organelle and organism itself is part of anything that is carbon-based. So there's mitochondrial in everything. So when we say all of our relations in the Philippines, we use this term called kapwa. And that word, K-A-P-A, is translated to say the self in the other. It means so much in that one word, those 4 letters. It means that I can't know myself without another. It means that I am never alone. It means that I am fully engaged and connected to all of the relations. Our people, my people, were animists. They believed that life force was in everything, not just things that we would know as life of the animals, but also like like I've heard before, the rock people and the tree people. Everything has life. We have in our traditions, because there's so many languages, there were so many words for our sacred people and our holy people. My mother and my father didn't speak the same language. It's not a dialect, it's a language. And the common language that they had was the colonizer language, English, in the same way that we're sharing it now. And sometimes we can't translate what we know, what's inside of us, into English without having to go through a big exclamation or an explanation. The Philippines was colonized by Spain. There were others, but Spain dominantly, and then the United States for a short period of time. And it was only after World War II, which was about 1946, that the Philippines was liberated as its own country. And at that time, there's a lot of turmoil. Decolonizing isn't an easy thing. It's not easy at all, especially in large governmental systems. How do we remove any of that colonizing thought or practices out of our governance that is considered the state? And of course, it's not the state of my people, because one of my people, my mother's people, I mentioned last night, was called Waray. The language is called Waray Waray. That word translates to nothing. And I don't think it means we are nothing, that we think less of ourselves. I think that it's the reminder that the ego that is the I cannot exist without the we, that we live in this interconnected reality. And the only way that we can get to the future is together. So when I started my journey, I was born and raised in the United States. I think it was a little odd, but I was able to find words for my experience the older I get, and my vocabulary broadened and deepened. But there's a term that's called tacit knowledge that has to do with body knowing. Now, I translate this as it goes back to the way in which the mitochondrial DNA, if I can have a practice of listening deeply in my own, the whispers in my blood, that the ancient memories arise. And it's in those ancient memories, they've never been gone. They've always been in me. That my ancestors are speaking not only in the ethers, but they're speaking inside of me, through me, and with me. One of the things that happens in speaking English is that it sort of structures your thinking into boxes. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here. If you're bilingual or you were raised with people who spoke another language, or you're from the Indigenous people here, and I want to thank you for allowing us to be here in this circle, that the way in which we think doesn't really translate into English well. But we need to struggle to try to learn how to communicate what our thoughts and our feelings are, what our true needs are, and what our visions are, and how we can move together. Dr. Ragland reminds us that never again. You know, we need to be able to have the memory so that we can create the future where there doesn't need to be repair. In the Filipino culture, family is very important, just like Indigenous cultures everywhere. I sort of alluded to the fact that my journey started very young and unusual, because as a small child, you know, once I started to go to school, I was raised in a home. And Kevin Deere says, we come from love and we return to love. In traditional Filipino families, you don't say, I love you to one another. Why would you? Because how could you not be love? How could your family not have loved you into being? So I had to learn to actually say certain things to people because they needed to hear it, rather than me just knowing that that's where I come from, and I wouldn't be spending time with them. The minute I met Sherry in an environment where we talk about women's work, but these are mostly academic women. And I'm not a scholar. You know, I was raised in a traditional way. I was taught at the next to experts who created, they created things like the internet. They created the space shuttle. And my friend and mentor, who was a futurist, he would have salons where he'd have these experts come who would talk to us about the future. And he believes, and I hope that he is correct, that he believed so much that the world would come together in unity, allowing the beautiful diversity by 2030. And I was like, really? And now this was in the 80s, 1980s, in 2030. And then he asked us to predict when we thought we might see the world coming together. And I thought 2040. I didn't think 2030. My other friend and mentor said 2050. But I don't know. It's a possibility. And if it's possible, I want to be able to help support to bring us into that place. I was told that my job was to help people. There was a woman who came to my town who took young women and began a practice with us. And for about 25 years, twice a day, I meditated, I journaled, I shared my dreams. I don't talk about this in the regular places that Sherry and I are together because it's like I said, an academic place. But I've been told by these elders that my job was to make sure these people talked to me about the way that the systems would be breaking down. There would be a systemic breakdown of all of the infrastructures in the United States, but basically in the world. The industrial age was coming to a close. We needed to prepare for that. But more importantly, we needed to know how to be with one another in peace on the other side. And I know it sounds crazy, absolutely ridiculously crazy, but most of the visions that people had about the future was without money. We had returned to a place of trust and not reciprocity from the point of view of this equals that. It was about, what are your needs? What do you really need? And honestly, you can't know what somebody needs without spending time with them, to get to know them, to understand their story. So I was given a task to go out into the world and to find my teachers, because I was stepping into a place that had not ever been created before. And that there were now so many of us on the planet that nobody could see what the full future would look like, but we needed to listen and to pay attention. And I was told that I needed to learn how to live off the earth. My teacher in 1970 told me that I needed to be able to be in a place that had a well, fertile land. I needed to learn how to farm. And it wasn't because there was going to be any, like nuclear disaster, although that could happen, but just the nature of the earth herself. As an example, in Los Angeles, where they built this huge city, LA doesn't have the ability to support the millions of people there. In that land, they have recorded 2 major droughts. One was 244 years, and one was 144 years. So when you think about how we are designing the way that we live, and honestly, they knew this when they started building LA, because we are stealing, basically taking water from Northern California to Southern California. We take water from the Colorado River into California. This is not sustainable. It's absolutely not sustainable. I'm an island people. We were self-sustaining. It wasn't until the United States that made us dependent on capitalism. Our lands are fertile enough that we can feed all the people. We were the largest exporter of rice, and now we're one of the largest importers. Why? Because of the practices of farming. But that's turning around. That's turning around. In the 1970s, the Philippines began instituting schools of living tradition, where each of the indigenous people are being able to teach their culture, teach their language 24 hours a day. And they have a relationship with people coming in. One of the largest exports of the Philippines is human beings. We export people around the globe on work contracts. That was designed by the United States as a way that you know, in some ways, and in some cases, is modern day slavery. When Sherry asked me to come here and speak to you, what I wanted to share really, wherever you are in your world, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, wherever you are in your age, you can begin to be different. And we have to have the courage to be different. We're not given an owner's manual to this human body. In the 1970s, when the Philippines began looking back into their own culture as a country and as a very diverse group of people, they did a massive analysis of all of the islands and found that there are common practices because we share rooted language in Austronesian. So a lot of our spiritual practices, a lot of our cosmologies are similar. There may be nuances, but they developed something that they call Sikaloyan Pilipinas. It cannot be taught in English. It is never taught in English. It is only taught in Tagalog because the construction of the brain, the way our neural pathways work from the time that we're tiny, tiny children, are stimulated by our speech centers. And the way that we view the world is actually shaped by our words. And the world is shaped by our words, what we speak out loud, what motivates us, what we step into. So as I got older and realized that I needed to go back, I needed to bring forward all of this to re-knit together. We're weavers. My father's side of the family, I don't know if you've ever seen piña. It's pineapple fibers, tiny, tiny, tiny fibers. My grandmother and the women in my family, they wove fabric out of pineapple fibers. The men made baskets and the women made baskets and mats out of abaca and hemp, but mostly abaca. Hemp, of course, is not part of the Filipino indigenous. But because of the Spanish galleons that came, we have a 500-year tradition of cacao. We've been recognized internationally as having heritage cacao seeds from most ancient and pure. The same thing with coffee. There's beans that are grown in the Philippines that is only 3% of all the consumption in the Philippines. There's a particular oil that I'm using on my face that only grows in one place because it's the only place this particular nut grows in the world. And it grows from the ash of a volcano. There's a type of medicine in India they call Ayurvedic medicine, but each indigenous culture has something that's similar. But the Ayurvedic medicine and also the 5-element Chinese prior to the Cultural Revolution, where it was holistic. You eat what's on your land. You drink the water from your land, and that will keep you balanced. So I've taken today to have my first cup of coffee from beans that were grown in the Philippines. I put that oil on my face to celebrate my ancestors. But I come to you today with this idea that while it is challenging, my mother talks about, they used to talk about the war, you know, was a short period of time, really, all things considered, in terms of the big scope of our humanity. But had it gone on another year, my mother wouldn't have been here. And it was because of the war that my father met my mother in 1944, 45. They married there. And it was just this year in January, my father was recognized with a Congressional Gold Medal. At that time, when the Japanese occupied the Philippines, of course, it was US soil. But more than that, at the end of World War II, the Philippines was liberated from the United States and became its own country. So my dad is a hero to me. And my mom, when she came here to the United States, my mom was very active in her voice. She wrote to the mayor. I have letters from the president's office. She's written to the governor because she knew that in this democracy, even though it was hard, her voice needed to be counted. And she had a responsibility to show up. And that there are now 4 generations that are actually living on Turtle Island from my ancestors in the Philippines, which I mentioned. We have relatives all over the world, direct blood relatives to my father's and my mother's side of the family. And part of the beauty of our culture is that we're adaptable and we're respectful. And we have so much gratitude for the stewardship that you've had for this land, the people of this land. When I moved to a place that was in California called Ojai, I lived in a wilderness sanctuary. And the minute that I moved there, I wanted to meet the Indigenous female elder in that community. People were very protective of her, and I understand why, but I have been recognized as a spiritual leader in my own communities, and I was going to be there, you know, doing my own ceremonies in my own land. And I wanted to just acknowledge her and get permission. I invited her to come to my house, and it was the first time in her life. She was born and raised there. The Chumash people have been on those lands for 10,000 years. It was the first time in her life that she felt welcomed in that canyon. And she had never been in the hot springs there because it was owned by white people. So we forged a relationship, and I became an ally to her. Every time somebody wanted me to do a ceremony, I said, you need to have the elder here do a ceremony. When people would want to bring in the Plains people to do a blessing, I'd say, why aren't you having the local Chumash people do the blessing? There's so much that we need to learn about how to be good allies to one another and how to acknowledge these past transgressions that we don't mean to, we just don't know. I think the Filipino people are very curious, and it's in that childlike curiosity to know the world, to remember to respect our elders, to respect our teachers. It's through my friend Julie Tumamite. I was introduced to the grandmothers in the Southern California area who were all whale tribe women. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences that I had, because they filmed and documented these whale tribe people telling their stories from up the Pacific Northwest down into New Zealand, where the migration happens. And in California, where the Ojai, where Ojai is where the baleen whale is. Ancient. They had solid teeth like humans do. Very ancient whales. So wherever you are in your spiritual journey, we need to reconnect with our own ancestors, to know your ancestors. In the past, there are thousands who dreamed you into being. And don't forget, there's ancestors that are coming from the future. Their spirits are going to drop into physical bodies too. So you'll always be able to find your ancestors. And if you're mixed race, you have plenty of ancestors to choose from different parts of the planet. So I just want to say thank you. And that I want to say just the name of this particular goddess. Her name is Mayari. From the Tagalog people, she's the goddess of the moon. Her brother is the sun god. And Mayari stands for egalitarian rule. It doesn't mean that, two halves make a whole. It means that we are equal, shoulder to shoulder. She knows how to fight. She knows how to make weapons. She knows how to birth babies. She knows how to create beauty, as well as her brother. But they protect the people. And she is identified as a deity in the Philippines that represents nonviolent revolution. So may it be so that we step into the future together to create a wave. As Kevin Deere says, we come from love, we return to love. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here so much, sharing all those stories and the important things that come out of your area. Appreciate it so much. Thank you so much again, taking the time. I know the time difference is probably really weird, but it looks like the sun's out there anyway. So we're going to end by going to Sherry.
Thank you, everyone who has been a part of this day. There's been so many really important things shared with us today. So many really powerful words that we all need to be able to have the time to sit with and to digest and to absorb. And I want to just give my deep gratitude to every one of the speakers who shared today. Something from their heart, something that they felt it was important for you to know. And so we're going to take a break now until the evening session. The evening session will start at 7 p.m. Where we will be getting words from our relatives at Turoa, our Maori relatives from New Zealand. And that session will be from 7 to 9 p.m. So we will look forward to seeing you all at that time and being able to continue this gathering of carrying this prayer forward that began 5 years ago and will continue through 21 years. that you're now all a part of. And so have a wonderful dinner, and we'll see you again at 7 p.m. Apchich.